Okay, this is the combat at Medjayun. We have 4 Commonwealth units which are going to take part, so we'll ignore the artillery and the anti-tank. And we will commit these 2 Commonwealth battalions, a 3rd Commonwealth battalion and some engineers. The slight tweak in this particular situation is you will notice that those Australians, which is the 6th strength units with the blue band on them, actually have a action rating of 4, the black number in the centre, but it also has a green ring around it. I don't know if you can catch that on the scale of the video. The green ring is a special rule in Reluctant Enemies, and it means that they're currently in training, so they actually get their action rating reduced by 1 until we get to the July turns, at which point it becomes a 4, so they've acclimatised and they're more suited to the combat. So initially we have a 4-to-1 in very close, with no modifier for action rating. Okay, so for the surprise roll, well, that's a good surprise roll because that's given them an 11, so let's see how many shifts they get. Wow, and they get 6 shifts, which is takes them from 4-to-1 in the very close to 21-to-1 in the very close, which is quite a chunk. These guys must have prepared really well for this particular combat. So we'll actually do the combat roll now. And again, we're rolling particularly well. We've got a 9. A 9 is an AE3 DL202DG. So the DL2 effectively is we have to lose 2 steps from the Vichy. Now that immediately means that that is gone. So we can take that out of the equation. The AE3 means that all 4 of those units attract an exploitation marker. It gives us the ability to move on in the next phase, which actually we would quite readily take, to be fair. So let's just sequence this through. What I think I would be tempted to do in this particular case is I'm going to actually leave the engineers. No, I won't. I was going to readjust the stacks, but given the low movement values, I won't. I'll simply put the markers in place. And obviously those should actually be in that hex there. We also need to remove 1 SP from here for the supply for the Commonwealth, and we need to remove 1 T from there for the Vichy supply. And that would be the end of that phase. Okay, the exploitation phase. I think you could tell there was some hesitancy before when I was trying to think it through, and you're trying to review what you would do and how you would action the units. And I was thinking mostly of overrun and that little Libyan unit in front of the city of Majayoun as a possible target of an overrun, which wasn't likely because of the low movement values. But actually, now that I've kind of like reflected on it, or my thought was, actually what we need to do here is we need to think of the Commonwealth units having just prepared so well for this invasion, had a hugely successful first combat. I kind of envisage them being flushed with success, and essentially what they're going to do is they're going to barrel down the road and attempt to put a main on the city. So we're going to just move all of these up into that hex there and throw our weight against the city and see what happens. Inevitably we need to draw supply, and again I've just realised that you're not quite seeing, but if you track back down this road is where we have this HQ unit. I think the place is called Safad, and we will draw out 1 SP because again we have 4 units involved in this combat. So 1 SP is thrown from that HQ to give us the combat supply going forward for the attack. And in defence, let's just see again. Okay, we've 2 units in that hex. The artillery and first of the 22nd. The artillery unit only really adds 1 strength point. Bit inconsequential, I suppose, but it does bring it back to I think it's just over 3.5, and in this game you round up. If it's over 3.5 you round it up, so it comes back to a 4-to-1 because we've got 22 in the Commonwealth stack. We'll take not the Pioneer unit because that's quite a valuable unit, but we'll take 225 as being our action rating unit with the Commonwealth, and obviously we need the better action rating of the Algerian infantry, so it'll be them in that instance. So surprise, what do we get for surprise? Oh, I do need to take off, sorry, I do need to take off 2T for the defence. Wow, definitely flushed with success, because that once again is a surprise roll. So let's see again what we get in terms of the surprise shift. Yeah, not quite the shift it was the last time, but still 4-to-1. On the table 4-to-1 jumps to 6-to-1, so it's a 6-to-1, and the result for the combat is not so good, a 5. So a 5 gives us an AL1 DO1. So straight away I know the Commonwealth are going to take theirs, so there's a Commonwealth battalion gone. And by taking it, we force the Vichy to take theirs, and again that was the action rating unit, so they've gone. However, last ditch defence and all that does mean that they still hold Majayoun. I'm going to take the exploitation marker away because that will come off in the cleanup phase anyway. Interesting, very close. You do kind of look back and you think, did we have anything else we could have thrown? But I don't think there is. There's nothing within range. The units are quite limited in this particular game, this scenario. There isn't a huge amount on the board, so it's rare to have perfect reserves, although obviously with good forward planning you should have something to help you along. But in this case we've just fallen short, but having said that, it's only turn 1. We have this tenuous link still across the shouldn't use my fat hands to show this tenuous bridgehead over the Litani River, And we are right at the very doors of Measure U, and the Vichy are going to have to do something to reinforce this situation, because as it stands, we've got a Libyan battalion and an artillery unit holding this key piece of terrain. Yeah, going to be a one for the Vichy to try and sort out. That's for sure. Good pressure, I think, from the Commonwealth at the beginning of the game. Okay, so start of the Vichy turn 1. No air unit returns, no air unit refit phase. There is no first player determination or weather, obviously, as mentioned before. Reinforcement phase, no reinforcements. So the first thing we do is we roll on the supply table to see what the Vichy get in terms of supply. We roll a 7. Did you see that? 5 to 9 gives us 1 SP and 2 T. Okay, I'll place that on the table, but I'll just not action it yet for you. The next thing is there are no variables in this game for the Vichy, but we do have unit rebuilds. Because of the scale, things that are destroyed get a chance to come back. So we just quickly, if I just place this in here for a second, these are the units that were destroyed this turn. Put them in 2 rows there of 6, because for every 3 we get to draw 1. So I'm just going to quickly put those into a little pot, mix them up, and we'll randomly draw 2. So that's what we've got, a 5-3 and a 2-5. Now again, they go within 2 of a headquarters, so again I'm just going to position them on the map, and then we'll do the movement. Okay, Vichy movement phase. We're going to start on the coast, even though we do have the situation at Medjayun to resolve at some point. First thing that I wanted to do was have a look at these commandos. And I think straight away we are aware that we have quite a good unit in the armour unit. Only 1 less in terms of action rating. Doubled in the open, so 16. So 16 and 5 was give us 2 to 1. And first thing we'll do with that stack is attempt an overrun, I think, at 2 to 1 into that beach hex. It will cost us 2T, so we'll take that straight away from Beirut, and I'll just take these out of here so we can do something to roll the dice into. So surprise first of all, and this is going to be a -1 on the surprise roll in favour of the Commonwealth. That's obviously because of the action rating. And wouldn't you know it, the Commonwealth roll a 12. Sorry, the Vichy roll a 12. Even with the -1, that only takes us down to an 11. So in an overrun attack, you only need 9 or more for the attacker to gain surprise, 6 or less for the defender to gain surprise. So that's a good result for the Vichy. Let's see what we get in terms of shifts. Yep, not bad at all. 4 shifts. So we started at 21 in the open, sorry, 10 to 1 in the open, which rounds down to 9 to 1, but plus the 4 shifts puts us on the very top of the table. So we now roll 2 dice for the result. We get a 7, reasonably middle of the road, I suppose, but a 7, well, it would be an AE3 if it was in ordinary combat, but again, you ignore that if it's a an overrun. For the defender, the 7, sorry, it's an AE4. I forgot to remove the 1 for the action rating. So we rolled a 7, but it drops to a 6. So that's an AE4. So obviously only the chasseurs would qualify for the exploitation move. The Algerians won't. In terms of defender, it's a DL102. So again, only 1 step to the commandos. So the poor commandos suffer at the hands of those French light armour. Just going to find it. Exploitation 4. And because it's an overrun, obviously we end up in the hex. Of course, after having said that you don't garner an exploitation, I've just put that on there, of course. So that 3 movement points for the overrun is the entire movement allowance for that infantry unit, so effectively he's stuck there. The armour unit can continue to move. I think in this instance what I'm going to do is I'm just going to move him to there. And the other thing that I should have mentioned, of course, was that also cost us a further T, which we need to remove from Beirut. So again, I'll just quickly chalk that down. And just for reference, for anybody who's not familiar with the game, in Beirut, which Beirut is essentially at the very end of this road. If you track along and along and along, you come to Beirut. You can actually see here, that's a hyphen marker. There you go. There's a Beirut marker. So that's 10 movement points to that particular hex there from Beirut. But in Beirut there is the Verdelak HQ, which when deployed correctly has a, or in its combat mode side, has a throw range of 12 movement points, so it can easily throw supply all the way down this coastal road. So that's the unit that would have added the supply. What I'll also do is I will just move this 29th Algerian unit up, and that's going to be our blocking force eventually along the coastal section. Okay, I'm going to continue moving off camera and come back when I've shifted all the units along the coast. Okay, so this is the end of the Vichy movement phase. Essentially you can see that the units have consolidated along the line here, going away from the coast. Now obviously that we know the threat of the commandos is gone. A secondary blocking position just beyond Sidon. We could try and fight for Sidon. At the moment the argument against that is obviously if you attempt to fight for it and lose it, what you don't want is to lose the river line, which is the better defensive position. So at the minute we've kind of dropped our way back to there. The overrun was successful against the commandos. The 2 5-strength infantry battalions, which are holding the open terrain here, have been reinforced with 2 cavalry units from Beirut. Not enough in itself, but at the minute it's as much as we can kind of do. We've also moved an artillery unit up here with the Lair Chasseurs. Obviously they're going to become the kind of tactical reserve, if you like, for this area. The HQ doesn't need to move, so that's kind of the coast as stable as it can be at the moment. This unit is one of the 2 Legion units which were on the coast road responding to the initial invasion. They've had to re-scramble and really kind of go for it. We've put them in reserve to try and maximise their movement, so they are allowed to move a quarter of their movement allowance while in reserve prior to the actual exploitation phase, where we can release them and move them again. The sad fact for this particular unit, well, in fact for both the units, is neither of them can actually get the Major Yun. And this is going to be a huge thing, I think, in this game, depending on what happens with the initiative rolls at the end of this turn. If the Vichy get it, I think the Vichy would have to take it and move again, which case they can probably do something to stabilise that position. If the Commonwealth get it, I have a feeling that may well fall, but we'll see. It didn't fall last time. Who knows, the Vichy might hang on once again. You can see other units kind of moving down here. This one, again, I wouldn't suggest this ordinarily in a game. Well, at a stretch, the Commonwealth might be able to get his fingers on it because it's in strategic mode move. But again, this is part of the panic of trying to get Vichy units down into position to defend Major Yun. The Gooms are plodding along in behind, and we've moved the Arlebos HQ here. Probably the idea with them is the Vichy have a 1.5 RE rail cap, which when I'm playing normally I use that for shifting supply probably more than anything else. So the idea with that particular HQ is once it's in position here, it can it'll have a throw range of 8 down the road to Major Yun, and we can either 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, it's this route. We'll try and set up a supply dump at Dimas, and then obviously rail supply into that dump. It's within 10 only just, but within it has a throw range adjacent, if you like. So it can grab supply from Dimas and send it down to there, and that's that HQ set up, a bit like the one that's further down there, which is the Beirut one. Has again at the end of a rail hub a 12 throw range HQ who is effectively throwing supply all the way down here. So that's that side of it sorted out to a point. So excusing the wobbly camera work, here we have the situation with Damascus. Again, lots of units scurrying from the central area in Damascus. There was a light tank unit stationed here, which again the Delham, I think that is the HQ. He's sent supply to them, or fuel to them, and they are basically tracking down here again to be released in the reserve movement phase. A little like where are we? The little units that are all the way back here up the coast. Yes, here we go. So there's the other unit outside Beirut. Now he's had to scurry back up the coast road to try and make his way back round again and get over there. Sorry about that blurring. And indeed that unit, which is effectively trying to do the same sort of thing. But as we come back across here, so his intention is to kind of see if we can come down here a little bit. Now you can see that is actually the HQ, which is throwing supply all the way up here for the attack at Major Yun. Now my idea is that the Commonwealth are so thin on the ground that perhaps if that light tank unit can get himself in this sort of area, ideally in some better terrain than that open terrain, he can just cause a bit of mischief, block a bit of supply, and we might take some of the pressure off in front of Major Yun. That's the idea. Down here you can see again units pulling back from the slightly isolated supply dump at Saweja. Now I've done the same thing again, just blurred it all for you, sorry. And again units pulling back to try and form some sort of a line in front of this Commonwealth push from Daraa up this open area towards Damascus, which is at the end of this road. Okay, the Vichy aren't going to attack anywhere. They have just pretty much pulled back and spent an awful lot of supply moving units around, as you can imagine. Anything, as I said, motorised or armoured. So the classes truck and track need to pay for supply, so that's one tier unit. And there has been quite a few of them in the scramble to kind of put a defence up. But in front of Major Ewan, obviously we have this nice 8th strength artillery unit that you can see there in the in position. So they're going to shell the Pioneers and the Australians in front there. So 2T, I've already taken the 2T out of the equation for the supply to carry out that barrage. And essentially we have 8 barrage strength points. Shifts for the barrage are no shift for density because there's over a regimental equivalent in the barraged hex. So there's no shift for that, but you do get a shift, or the Commonwealth get a shift for the terrain. So we're down to the 5 to 7 column, and we roll. Wow, good roll for the Vichy. We roll a 10, and a 10 on the 5-7 is a DG. So that again is good news for the Vichy, because that gives us a disorganized marker on that unit there, which just lessens them just a little bit. In terms of combat capability, it means their strengths are halved. So that's a good. That was a good barrage, worth the supply in that instance. The only other thing that I did off camera was I also rolled for the supply dump, which is way across. I don't know if people will recall. In the open area, we're frantically moving back. We had 2 SPs of supply still in the supply dump at Swidia. So we rolled to blow it up, essentially, and we rolled a 2, which was pretty poor. So 50% of it was destroyed. So there's now only 1 SP. I suppose in the grand scheme of things, we can still try again if the Commonwealth don't grab it. But we'll see how we go from there. Okie doke, I'm going to go on now and do the exploitation and further movement of the reserves, etc., that we can do to try and again bring some order to this, and then we'll end the turn. Okay, so we finished the exploitation phase, and essentially you can see 2 battalions of the 6th Legion closing in on Midgedoon. Neither could make it this turn. One of them, it probably is worth pointing out that one of the 2nd 6th Legion was the unit that was released from reserve, released from its restricted status and moved down the coast with regard to an additional unit in terms of what would happen with the commando attacks. Now that movement down the coast actually stopped it from being available as a strategic reserve for Major Ewan. It could have made it, I believe, or it could have been further down the road, certainly. Had it not moved, actually it could have made it, because it could have done exactly the same thing it's done, moving once in reserve and then full movement in the exploitation phase, and it would have actually made it into the city. So it's interesting that by deploying that in defence of the first threat, it's denied itself the ability to react, what you could say is properly, in this next phase. But they are closing, and they're both good units. They could stabilise the front if the Commonwealth failed to take advantage of this position, which it's starting to swing a little bit against the Commonwealth here. I think, as I said, the coastal road is sorted in terms of a defence initially. Major Ewan starting to hopefully solidify. Still wide open over in the desert area. The only other unit that I would mention is the little light tank unit that I moved across there to kind of, as much as anything, mess with the Commonwealth's head a little bit. So you can see I've pulled it back a little bit. It could have actually gone further than that. In fact, I could have blocked the road. I haven't blocked the road because I just felt that it would be too simple for the Commonwealth to kind of remove it. So I'm not sure what I would have gained. But that's essentially the end of the phase. We've got cleanup to do, which actually there isn't too much to do on the Vichy side. But what I was going to do now was just quickly skip on as if we were beginning turn 2, which obviously we're about to, and we'll have a look at those initiative rolls. So I'm going to roll for the Commonwealth first of all. Okay, middle of the road, Commonwealth roll of 6. Now let's see what we get for the Vichy. One dice on the floor, but when I can find it, we'll take the result that it's showing. Die retrieval accomplished, and it's an 11. So the Vichy, the gods of war have favoured them, and they have the choice. As I said, I think they've done quite well to readdress the situation anyway. I mean, that the stack in front of Major unit is currently DG, which means that those DGs wouldn't come off until the end of the Commonwealth turn. Kind of stalls the attack a little bit. Still, it is very early, and it does give us more options with regards to the open area in front of Damascus. So I think brave decisions are needed, and I think the Vichy will take